Today in part 9 of our gas series, we're diving deeper into the abilities themselves. And what better example than the melee attack ability? In this lesson, you will learn how the animation, gameplay ability, and weapon class all work together to make a clean and reusable melee attack system. We're not just building a single melee attack here. We're actually building the foundation of what will be every melee attack in our game. By the end, you will have a fully functional melee ability that deals damage through a real-world trace system. Scalable, modular, and ready for any weapon you add next. So let's jump right in. Let's start off by showing you the animation that I'll be using for our axe attack. So I have this axe attack that I got from Mixamo. As always, I edited a bit and I of course retargeted to the Unreal Mannequin, and we want to create a montage out of it. So I am going to right click on it and say create anim montage. Let's name it the montage melee attack axe swing, something like that. All right. So now we have our axe swing montage. Let me just really quick also go to our axe socket and add the preview asset so we see what it looks like. And I also have some visual effects, some trail effects for the axe that I want to add. So right about here, for example, you can right click and add a notify state timed Niagara effect. And it starts here and yeah, about here. All right, and this is the VFX that I have. It's called trail. Yep. We just need to scale it a bit. I think make it a bit bigger, 1.5, and offset it a bit. Now let's see what it looks like. Boom. Oh, I did not add it to the socket. Axe equipped socket. Now, there we go. All right, I think that looks pretty good. So this is the montage that we're going to play when we do our axe swing attack or our ability. So the next thing is to create the actual ability. So it's going to be a pretty simple attack for now. So in our gameplay abilities folder, in our abilities, let's right click and create a new blueprint of type Nexus gameplay ability. Make sure, of course, we created our new base ability class. So this will be the parent for all of our abilities moving forward. Let's call it GA underscore melee attack underscore axe swing. You'll see why in a bit I'm having this naming. I'm making it a bit structured because we're going to talk about modular abilities in the future. We're going to have a base melee attack, a base projectile, but I first want to show you how a regular melee attack looks like, and then we will modularize things. So, first of all, instance per actor as usual. This needs also to be an instance per actor, and let's give it a name in our asset tags here. So let's, under the gameplay ability, let's create a new subtag. Call it melee attack dot axe swing, and let's select it. Perfect. So the ability is quite simple. So on activate, we want to play the montage, right? That's pretty much the first thing we want to do. So there is a play montage and wait node. Make sure to select this one because this is the ability task, not the regular play montage. Because the ability task, again, offers things like client-side prediction and is meant to be played within an ability. So this is the node we want. It gives you some nice options, and we're just going to choose our axe swing montage that we created. And then after the ability plays, we want to end it on complete. We want to end the ability on interrupt and on cancelled. Very important, make sure to check this box, allow interrupt after blend out. Otherwise, if you get interrupted during blending out, this pin will never be executed and then the ability will be stuck. All right, we're gonna leave the ability like this for now, and let's add it to our weapon config so we grant this ability when we equip the axe. All right, so in our weapons folder, let's open our axe, and under here, this is the dummy ability that we were testing with last time. So let's remove this character jump and replace it with axe swing. And for those following me on Patreon, we have this abilities bar that we show icons in. So I made this icon for the axe swing, looks like this. So we're just going to really quickly show it in the data table by adding an entry, the name of the ability. We're going to call it GA underscore melee attack underscore axe swing underscore C. That was the name or the class of the ability. And let's delete those two that we were added for testing. All right, and one thing very important, let's make sure that the should show an abilities bar boolean that we added in the last time is checked. So now if we play and I equip an axe, there is my ability in the abilities bar. Now we just need a way to activate it. So in our player, as always, I'm going to open my BP Nexus player. And we need to activate the ability just like we do all the other ones here. So we need an enhanced input action for it. So in our input actions, let me just duplicate one of them, duplicate this dash. And I'm going to call this IA melee attack axe swing as well. All right, I don't think I need to change anything here. We just need to add it to our mapping. And by the way, later on, we will discuss also dynamic inputs if you want abilities to be mapped to a slot instead of a specific key for every single ability. So maybe the left click does the same thing or calls the same slot, and depending on what ability is in that slot, that's what will be activated. But we're not doing that right now. So now all we need to do is just add another mapping here, choose our axe swing, and I will map it to right click for now. Okay, now back in my Nexus player, let's actually move all of these together. So these are all of our ability activation. All right, just clean things up a bit, and let's now use our IA axe swing and try to activate. So try activate ability. Sorry, wrong one. Try activate by class and use our axe swing. So right now, when we press the right click button, we will try to activate this ability. Of course, only if the weapon is equipped. If I'm trying to right click it now, I don't have the ability. But now if I right click, boom, here is my ability. Great. So very simple ability. Oh, and by the way, right now, as you can see, when I move my camera, my character moves. But during the ability, because it has root motion, if I try to move my camera, the character doesn't move. It waits until the ability is over. That's because root motion blocks movement, but also blocks rotation. If you want rotation to still happen in root motion, there's a very simple key called allow physics rotation. Yeah, that's the one. Allow physics rotation during animation root motion. So just check this box, and now when I play and I right click, the character moves even during the animation. So if you want to still be able to like aim your attack after you've pressed the button, then this is a good option to do. All right. Now we want our ability to do damage. We want to do a hit scan, a trace, when we swing the swords. So right now, of course, we just played the animation, but the sword doesn't, or the axe doesn't do anything. So we want a trace to happen when we swing the axe. So where do we do this trace? We have multiple places, right? Do we do the trace here after we play the animation? Or do we add some notify in the montage itself and play the trace? Or do we do the trace in the weapon class itself? Which part is actually responsible for this? Well, the answer is all three. Everything that we discussed here, the ability itself, the montage, and the weapon have a role to play in doing damage. And I want to explain each one of their roles step by step and how they come together to create a modular system. So let's see how that looks. First off, the montage itself knows when the swing happens, right? So the information on when exactly the swing happens, for example, you want damage to be applied when the axe is in this range, for example, right? So when the axe is actually swinging. We don't want damage to be applied right now when the axe is behind me, and I don't want damage to be applied if the axe hits something when the swing is over. So this information is baked into the animation itself. So we need an anim notify to tell us when to actually do our hit scan or our trace. So that's one part. The actual trace itself should be the responsibility of the weapon class, because the trace depends on the size of the weapon. So if it's a, I don't know, small baseball bat, it's different than if you're swinging a two-handed weapon, right? And this information is in the weapon class itself. So the trace needs to be done on the weapon class. But the weapon class doesn't have information on the damage that should be applied. Is this a light attack? Is it a heavy attack? I don't know. The weapon is just being swung, but how hard are we swinging it? Are we doing a special attack? Should I apply maybe poison? The weapon doesn't know. But the ability itself knows. This is a regular axe swing. Maybe we have a combo. Maybe we have a special axe swing. So the ability itself knows what kind of damage to apply. So then this will be the responsibility of the ability to call the hit scan on the weapon and coordinate the efforts between the notify and the weapon. So this is just how the flow will look like in a nutshell. It will start making a lot more sense when we start implementing it. So let's start by the montage itself. So we want a notify to tell us when the weapon is active, when it's live, when should I do the hit scan. So we're going to create a custom notify for that. So let's create a new folder here in our content folder, call it anim notifies. So just like the notify window we added here for the trail, the visual effect starts here and then ends here. This is what this Niagara trail anim notify does for us. So we're going to create an anim notify window just like it for our hit scan. So right click blueprint class and search for anim notify. But we don't want the regular anim notify. No, we want the anim notify state, because a state is a window, has a start and an end. So we're going to name it an state underscore hit scan window. All right. It doesn't have an event graph, but it has functions you can override. So for example, the get notify name is just the name that will appear in the montage editor. So let's call it something like hit scan window. All right. So when you use it in the montage, this is the name that will appear. Then the two functions that we're interested in is receive notify begin and receive notify end. So let's override both of them, receive notify begin and receive notify end. And then we have them here. So what happens when the notify begins? So the hit scan or the weapon becomes active. Well, we have a reference to our mesh component. We can get the owner of that mesh, which will be the actor, and then we can send a gameplay event. All the notify will do is send the event. It won't actually do the hit scan. We said the weapon will do that. So send gameplay event to actor, and the actor will be the owner. And return true. Now the name of the event. We're going to create a new event here under the events. Add a subtag. Let's call it hit scan start. All right. So we have a hit scan start event. And we're going to copy this and do the same thing on notify end. So now overriding the notify end, let's paste this. Mesh component, get the owner. Connect this, return true. But now the event name, let's go event, hit scan, and add a new tag. Let's call it hitscan.end. So this is when the hit scan should end. All right, search for it, hit scan end. Great. So how do we use this notify? Well, just like we added the trail, I added the trail in the beginning also to do a little foreshadowing. So we're going to add the hit scan window here as well. But let's create a new notify track. So under tracks, add notify track, just so we have a separate track to add this new one. And when do you want the weapon to be active? So when should the weapon do damage if it hits someone? So maybe starting somewhere around here, for example, then add our notify state and find our hit scan window, and then ends maybe, boom, right here, for example. All right, so if anyone is standing in front of the axe during this window, they will be damaged. But right now, all it does is just send a notify. It doesn't do much more. So how do we use these notifies or this event that's being sent? Well, we're going to use it in our axe swing. So in our ability, in our axe swing ability, what we can do, and oh, we only want to do damage on the server, by the way. This is really important. You do traces and hit scans only on the server. You don't want the client to be responsible for doing damage. The client just receives the replicated values. So the first thing we want to do is check if we have authority. So if we are the server right after the montage plays, then we will call the function wait for gameplay event. Make sure not to use wait for gameplay event on actor, use wait for gameplay event. The reason is if you see wait for gameplay event on actor here, it will tell you if used in an ability graph, this async action will wait even after activation ends. We don't want that, and it recommends that within an ability to use for wait gameplay event, so that it stops waiting when the ability is over, which is what we want. So wait for gameplay event, and the event we're waiting for is the hit scan start for 1. And then we're going to do something when the hit scan starts. But let's wait for the other event as well. For wait event, this time hit scan end. And we're going to do something as well. Like I said, we're not going to do the trace here. We're not going to go here and do multi-sphere trace for objects and then see what we hit. No, this is not the responsibility of the ability. Because if we do it here, then any new ability that we make will have to re-implement the trace. We want the trace to be in a centralized place so that we can reuse it, and that centralized place should really know about the shape of the weapon. So this will only call a function on the equipped weapon, which is our axe. So now let's implement the actual hit scan logic. So to do that, it might be shared by multiple melee weapons, not just the axe. So we will implement it on our base weapon. And we're going to do hit scan the right way. I'm not just going to do a simple sphere trace in front of me. No, we will actually track the path of the axe. And while it's active, we're going to keep doing multiple traces and see what we hit in that duration. So I want to show you a practical example instead of just doing a simple trace. So this is how you would properly do it in a project. So first, we want to know when the trace starts and when the trace ends. So in our viewport, again, this is my base weapon. So this is just going to be, these are going to be overridable values. So in our viewport, what I'm going to add is 2 scene components. So one scene component here, just under the default root. I'm going to call it trace start. And I'm going to add another scene component and call it trace end. Oh, make sure they're not, make sure they are next to each other, not underneath each other. So these scene components are just locations in the world that we can use. On the base weapon, it doesn't really matter where they are. On the base weapon, they're just meant to be overridden. So that means in my axe here, compile, now I have my trace start and trace end, okay? So let me just reset their location here. Maybe the trace end, we can just have it by default above here. This is, again, on the base weapon. We're going to override them in the axe. These are meant to be the locations telling me how large the axe is, what's the beginning and end of the axe. So the trace start is just about here at the beginning of the axe, and trace end, I'm going to move it slightly above the axe because you also want to do a hit scan a bit larger than the weapon to give the player some breathing room. So these are the locations where we're going to do the trace from. But how do we actually do the trace? Again, back in our base weapon here, I don't need any of these. I'm going to create 3 custom events. Okay, one called hit scan. This will be our actual hit scan. One called hit scan start. This will start doing the hit scan multiple times. And one called hit scan end. So when we end our hit scan. Let's first implement our regular hit scan and see what it looks like. When we do a hit scan or a trace, we want to call multi-sphere trace for objects. For objects, because we only want to test against a specific object, so pull off of the object type, say make, and we only want to test against pawns, so we only hit pawns. The actors to ignore, we want to make an array as well, and ignore ourself. So we don't want the owner of the weapon to be damaged by the weapon. So pull off and say get instigator. Now, it's very important at this point to make sure that the instigator is valid. So that's in our weapons manager component. So when we spawn the weapon right here, I don't have an instigator. So very important when we spawn the weapon to plug in the instigator. This is by the way, the extended weapons manager where you have the stow logic and so on. The other weapons manager, we spawn it on equip here. So on equip, when I spawn it, I need to plug in my owning character as the instigator. This is really important. All right, so now we have an instigator. What about the start, end, and radius? Well, this is why we created these trace start and trace end. So I'm gonna get my trace start and say get world location. All right, and that will be my start. Then I'm gonna get my trace end and get world location, and that is my trace end. Perfect. And the radius, we can default it to like 20 or something, but we're also gonna right click and make it a variable. So the hit scan radius. Because again, we are inside the base weapon class, so these values will be overridable. And again, even though we are getting trace start and trace end here in the base weapon class, when we actually call hit scan, we're gonna call it on a reference of the axe. So it will use the trace start and trace end of the axe. Doesn't matter at all where the trace start and trace end of the base weapon is. Okay. So let's also draw it for like 0.1 seconds just to debug it. And let's see how this works. So now we have the hit scan. Now we want to call it when hit scan starts and stop calling it when hit scan ends. So let's start implementing these. Hit scan starts sets a timer because again, we want to call the scan multiple times as the axe is being swung, not just once, but throughout the entire duration the axe is active. So do a set timer by event. Let's say 1/30. So we're going to call it 30 times a second. Set it to looping, and the event here, say create event, and we just search for our hit scan. So we call the hit scan event, which is this one, 30 times a second. And then we want to promote this timer to a variable, call it the hit scan timer. And then on end, all we want to do is clear this timer. So stop calling hit scan. So get our hit scan timer, say clear and invalidate timer. Amazing. So now we have these hit scan functions on our base weapon. How do we actually use them? Well, back here in our ability, where we added our wait events, this is where we want to call hit scan start and hit scan end. And we call it on a reference of our weapon. So let's get a reference to our weapon as the first thing. When the ability starts here, let's get our avatar actor from actor info. This is our pawn. Get the component by class. So search for our weapons manager component. I'm using the extended one. Again, this was for the Patreon video where it has the additional logic. And we want to make sure it's valid. Always make sure it's valid. So if we have a valid weapons manager component, then we continue. If we don't have a valid weapons manager component, just end the ability because I really can't do a hit scan without a weapon. Then from our weapons manager component, it's valid. We get our equipped weapon. So this is the variable we have on the weapons manager component. Right click and convert it to a validated get because we also want to make sure it's valid. And if it's not valid, also end the ability. Excellent. So now we have a valid weapons manager component, a valid equipped weapon. Let's also make it a variable. So promote to variable equipped weapon. Great. This is just a variable on the ability itself now. So now when I receive from the anim notify, remember we send this event hit scan start from the anim notify right here, and we send end right here. So when I receive this event, I'm going to get my equipped weapon. Again, make sure it's valid because maybe something happened to it between starting the ability and receiving the event. So make sure it's valid and then call hit scan start. Simple as that. And then when it ends, again, get it, make sure it's valid, and call hit scan end. Amazing. So now we have every part responsible for its own thing. The montage is just responsible for telling you, hey, this is when you should probably do the hit scan. Hey, this is when you should end the hit scan. I don't care how you do it. The weapon says, hey, I know how to do a hit scan. I know how to start it and end it, but I don't really know what to do after the hit scan happens. This part we're going to do in just a second, and you'll see how it communicates with the gameplay ability. And the gameplay ability coordinates. It waits for the event from the montage and then calls a function on the weapon. Great. So let's quickly test it out and see. So now I equip the weapon, I right click, nice, you see? Now we have our hit scans multiple times, duck, 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 duck. And anyone in our way will get hit. Now let's test it as well in multiplayer to make sure it's working on the server and the client. So server hits, boom, we see a hit trace, perfect, and the hit trace is correctly turning green. And the client, now you'll see something interesting. We only do the hit scan on the server. So you see only the server copy shows the hit scan debug. The client doesn't show it. Again, this is because the hit scan should only be done on the server. You want the authority to be responsible for doing actual hit scans. Excellent. So this works for now. But we're not applying damage, of course, when we attack. So how do we apply damage on this weapon swing? So back here in our base weapon, when we get the list of hit results, we want to loop over them and apply damage. But let's see how exactly we're going to do that to make it reusable. So get the hit results, do a for each loop over all of them, and break each one. Get the hit actor and get their ability system component. So we always need to make sure we're hitting someone with a valid ability system component. So check for is valid. So if it is valid, first we actually want to make sure that we didn't hit them before. Remember, this sphere trace will be done multiple times a second, and it's also a multi-sphere trace. That means it can hit the same actor multiple times. So we want to make sure that if an actor is hit, then they don't get hit again. So to do that, we're going to create an array called hit actors, and it's of type actor, object reference, make it an array. You can right click to quickly make it an array, or of course you can go here and turn it to array. So this will keep track of all the actors that we've currently hit. So get this array and check, does it contain this actor? All right, so if this is true, so do a branch. If the hit actors array contains this actor, then we've hit them before, don't do anything. If it's false, then add them to the hit actors array, because that means we just hit them now. So get your actor again from here. Add them to the hit actors array on false, and then proceed to do damage. But just a second, before we do damage, I need to go and do one thing really quick here. In our hit scan start, it's very important to make sure that our hit actors array is reset before each hit scan. So get our hit actors and say clear. Otherwise, we just keep, otherwise we can't hit actors when we do a new scan. Right, so hit scan starts, we clear the array, we check who we've hit, we make sure we only hit them once by adding them to an array once we've hit them. And now we want to apply damage to them. So we do that by getting their ability system component right here and calling apply gameplay effect spec to self. Self, again, because we're getting a reference to the hit actor themselves, and we're applying a gameplay effect to them. So this is how we apply a specific gameplay effect with a specific handle. But are we going to create the handle here? Are we going to define what kind of damage is applied to them here in the weapon? Well, no. Like I said in the beginning, the weapon is just doing a hit scan. It doesn't know what ability triggered the weapon. And maybe it's a powerful ability with a big damage, or maybe it's a light ability with light damage. So the ability knows how much damage or what kind of damage effect it should even apply. Maybe it's a heal ability that's doing a hit scan to see who to heal. So the spec handle shouldn't be the responsibility of the weapon. This should be taken as input from the gameplay ability. So when the gameplay ability calls hit scan here, it should pass in what type of effect to apply. So on our hit scan event, let's add an input and call it the effect spec handle. and it's of type gameplay effect spec handle. All right, this is an error because we haven't set it here, but that's fine. Let's first make it a variable. So as soon as hit scan starts, promote this to a variable, call it the effect spec handle as well. And then we can use this variable right here, effect spec handle. Perfect, so it's passed in from the gameplay ability and used in the weapon, and then the weapon hit scan can be reusable, agnostic, and modular. It doesn't know what type of effect to apply. You tell me, you as the ability tell me what effect to apply. Excellent. So, I don't think we have a damage effect, do we? I don't think we do, but let's see. So, how do we get the spec handle? Well, we did it before in one of the earlier tutorials. You say make, no, sorry, not this one. Say make outgoing gameplay effect spec. And this takes a class. We have damage over time, but we don't have instant damage. So let's create our gameplay effect for doing instant damage. So this is going to be quite simple. In our effects folder here, right-click, new blueprint of type gameplay effect. And let's call it GE damage instant. Okay. And close it and open it again to open in the data only view. Duration is going to be instant, and modifiers is going to have one modifier modifying the health attribute, adds to the final value. And the magnitude, we're going to also make it set by caller, so we're not going to put -25 here or something. We are going to make it like we discussed before. There is the set by caller, so the person calling it sets the magnitude by a given data tag. So we've already created this data.damage in the earlier part. All right, and we can also have it apply a gameplay cue. So we have a gameplay cue when we stand in the fire. We apply this gameplay cue. So under gameplay cue tags here, damage.burst. Yeah, that's the one. And that's pretty much it. It's a simple gameplay effect. Now let's use it back in our weapon here. So search for damage instant. But before passing it in, we first need to set its set by caller tag magnitude. So, and the data tag is data.damage. And the magnitude is, let's say, -25 or something. -33 is nice. -34, so 3 hits kills them. Okay. And then we pass this in as our spec handle. Perfect. All right. Now, with everything in place, let's see if it works. I should be able to damage this other guy. So look at the health bar of the client and see if they get damaged. And I'm going to right click. Boom. Nice. They got damaged and there were particle effects and sounds. Excellent. So this is working as expected. Now let's see if the client can damage us. And boom. Nice. Also taking damage as the server. Gameplay effect spawning. And it's beautiful. Boom. Now, one last thing, there is a quick bug that we want to fix. If I get interrupted for any reason while doing the hit scan, the hit scan end notify window won't be called. So let me quickly demonstrate it by going to my Nexus player here and just doing, I don't know, when I press 0 on the keyboard, let's play some test montage. I don't know. Let's play the equip axe montage, okay? So I'm going to equip or play this montage during the hit scan to interrupt myself, and you'll see. So I'll do it in slow motion. As soon as the hit scan starts, I'm going to press 0. And then I played another animation, which interrupted my axe swing. And now my hit scan is active all the time, so it never ended. So there is a very simple quick fix for this. So if we go to our axe swing, on end ability, let's also get our equipped weapon, convert to a validated get, and call hit scan end. Okay, so just in case a hit scan is active, call end when the ability ends. And of course, if there is no hit scan active, hit scan end won't really do anything because it's going to clear a timer that isn't active. So now let's test it out again. I am going to swing and press 0 to interrupt myself. I got interrupted and the scan ended. Perfect. Just make sure to delete this dummy montage that we added. All right, before we close, I just wanted to show you how reusable the system is for other weapons. So if I open my staff, for example, and I go under the abilities to grant here, and let's have the staff also grant the axe swing. The staff isn't an axe, but let's grant the axe swing ability. And also on our viewport, let's set the location for our trace start and trace end. Okay, so let's do something like that. So now if I play and I equip my staff and press right click, I do the axe swing ability but with my staff. And that's why we built the system in this way. This is why it's modular and reusable, and you will see even more next lesson how it can scale. And that's our first melee ability, complete with a reusable notify system, reusable hit scan system, and proper separation of concerns. This structure is going to make our abilities scalable and easier to extend later on, whether you're adding new weapons, new abilities, or new animations. And in the next part, we will see exactly how the system is scalable by taking what we've built today and turning it into our very first modular ability, which we will then use to create every melee attack, including a cool 3-hit combo that you will learn how to do next time. If you found this video helpful, make sure to hit that like button, it really helps the series grow, and make sure you're subscribed so you get notified when I release the next part. And for Patreon members, I've uploaded the project files as always, and feel free to use any assets that I create in your projects however you see fit. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.